Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Return Missionary Next Chapters podcast. I am your host, Sid Bassett. Today we explore a story that bridges the plains of Oklahoma with the isles of the Indian Ocean. Every return missionary carries a unique set of coordinates that define their transition home, and our guest today, Neil Knight, is no exception. From growing up as one of the few members of the church in a large Texas and Oklahoma upbringing, to a surprise assignment that took him back to his maternal roots in Mauritius. His journey as a masterclass in adaptation. Whether it was navigating a mission that spanned 2 languages or shifting professional careers from finance to accounting and now financial data analytics, his path reflects the constant motion of a life in progress. Let's dive into his story of faith, family, and divine pivots. Neil, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Oh, this is great. You have a terrific story, and I'm so glad we got you on the show. We're going to start off before your mission, and let's go back. Let's go way back, actually. You kind of grew up in, I think most of your formative years were probably in Oklahoma, and you were probably about the only member of the church in a school of 1,000 to 2,000 people. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. Not a lot of people at all.
So what was that like to kind of represent the church in that way?
It was a little overwhelming sometimes. I think a lot of times you were the only exposure that people really had to the church, both for good and for bad. So a lot of times, if you did something or if you messed up, that was it. That was someone's impression of the church and it kind of stuck with them, or vice versa. If you did something really good or, they had good impressions of you, that was what they remembered about the church. And, it wasn't something a lot of people knew about. This was back in 2005, 2015-ish. So, it was still kind of new. A large part of what people knew was about Mitt Romney running for president, and that was about it at that time.
It's funny. I started my career in the oil and gas company, and I went to a little town called Ponca City, Oklahoma. And while I was there, my boss, I take that back. My boss's boss, right, came into my office. He shut the door and he said, "Now, Sid, I hear that Mormons don't dance. Is that right? If we had like a party or something, would that?" I'm like, "No, that's not a thing." And then he says, "Okay, I got one more thing." And I know this is probably true because I've heard it from a variety of people that you guys paid tithing to your church. And I said, "Yeah, we do. Actually, we tithe, and just like you do, I think, in your church." And he said, yeah. He says, "But I hear that if you go to Utah to have your children, they reduce your tithing by a certain amount, by..." So there's a lot of education to be done all over the world, right? And it sounds like you were the one educating people to what the church is about.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know if I did a great job per se, but I tried my best at the time.
That's great. Well, I came before you, so it was all my fault if anything didn't work out for you. Okay, so one of the other things in our pre-conversations was you said that before you were baptized, you read the Book of Mormon, and you were baptized at the age of 8. So how did that sort of influence you in your spiritual preparation for things to come?
Yeah, it taught me the importance of reading scriptures daily and trying to get revelation and answers and connecting God through that pathway. I was always a big reader. Rode the bus to and from school. It was 30 minutes or so from age 6 or whatever it may be. And my dad at the time, I think I was 6 or 7, he was like, "Hey, you know about baptism, and we get baptized at the age of 8 if we're ready." He said, "I think a good goal for you would probably be to read the Book of Mormon." So I did. And, there's always talking about in Moroni, hey, read it with the intent to know. I did. And honestly, at age 7, when I was reading, I didn't really understand a lot, to be honest. But it was a good story, and it was more of just getting those habits in and realizing like, hey, I can ask or do something with an intent to learn something from God, and I can get an answer from that. I don't know that I got a very strong answer when I prayed about the Book of Mormon, but it definitely wasn't an answer saying, "Hey, this isn't it. This isn't right." And I felt good about it. It was enough direction to go forward and move on. And there's times in my life where I'll look back at that and be like, "Hey, that was enough for me at the time, in my adult life. sometimes I want more of an answer, and there's not. It's just, it feels good enough, and I've given it enough thought, and I think the Holy Ghost has confirmed it for the most part for me, and that's good enough to move forward.
Well, developing that relationship with a young age is an important thing for all of us. To do it at such a young age of 7 is quite impressive. Like you said, you probably don't remember much of what you read, but even in this preparation for this conversation, it was important for you to say that. I mean, I thought that was really special, and so it meant a lot to you from your very earliest of age. So now fast forward, and your friend group, probably not, half your class was going on a mission, like, some areas of the world. So did you always want to serve a mission? Is that always in the plans? And was there anything that ever complicated that along the way?
It was always out there. Again, I mean, my parents told me, and that was kind of the expectation growing up. And, I didn't get a lot of tour money growing up, but the expectation was like, hey, you're going to pay your tithing. You save 50% for your mission. And then the other 50%, you can do with as you may. And so it was kind of always just there, I think, until I hit 16, 17, 18. And then I had to kind of be like, hey, is this something I actually want to do? Um, and again, it wasn't a strong prompting to be like, you have to go on a mission. I know 100% this is what I should be doing. But again, it was enough information and enough of a good feeling and confirmation from the Holy Ghost to go off of, to be like, hey, this is the right thing for me to do in my life right now. And as a result of the blessings I've seen in my life from the gospel, I think I would like to do that and help others have that as well.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think it's very common to not be 100% sure, but to be some percentage. It sounds like you released 51%. Yeah,
The
sure. That's what you
majority,
want to hear.
right?
The majority ruled, yeah, in your mind. I love that. So now this is a pretty exciting story. So we fast forward, you put in your papers and you get your call. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, at the time, I mean, I had a buddy I grew up with, and we were in Young Men's together from 12 till to 18. And so we kind of always made this pact together. And so we put our mission papers in at the same time. We got our calls, and we opened it, I think, a Monday or Tuesday night. It had actually snowed, which was weird for Oklahoma. And so we went to the church, had invited some friends and family. Mainly was expecting mostly the LDS community to show up, but more of my friends actually showed up to my mission call opening than I thought. Friends from high school who didn't have any relation to the church. I remember my buddy read his call. He was going to Brazil, and then it was time for me to read my call. And I remember it was kind of nervous and exciting, but I opened it, you read through it, and then immediately I read, and it says, hey, you're going to go to the Madagascar and Mauritius mission. And I mean, at first, it didn't fully click for me immediately until I think somebody said it. I mean, I knew Madagascar was close to Mauritius, where my mom was from, but I didn't know necessarily that it was in the same area. But yeah, then I opened my call. Somebody mentioned that Mauritius was in that area. And somebody else said out loud, was like, he's going home.
Uh,
And then I just started crying, and I was just so excited. And,
wow.
I didn't even know that could be possible. Like it was a blessing in disguise that I didn't know had happened yet, so to speak.
I'm a father, right? And I've seen all my boys go on a mission, but there's nothing like the heart of a mother. And she must have been very excited.
Oh, ecstatic 100%. Beyond belief.
Okay, now because this is a podcast about return missionaries, but you're still a missionary. But I think this is quite important because you go on your mission to Madagascar. I'm curious, when you open it up, could you pronounce the mission name well, as you just did? Because that was
I don't think I
impressive.
could say Antanmeri. I'll have to go back and look at my video sometime, but
Okay.
I'm sure I butchered it completely when.
That's awesome. Our son went there as well, and he did not know how to pronounce it. So, all right. So you go to Madagascar. Tell us about this. There's an evolution over to Mauritius. I don't know how that all happened. You want to explain that?
Yeah. So I was in Madagascar for probably a period of about a year. The president transferred me to the office about probably 2 or 3 months before I left for Mauritius. afterwards, when I talked to him, I realized that he was trying to arrange things with transfers and with trios to get everything to work out that I could leave to Mauritius and not mess up too much in Madagascar. I remember I was in a car ride with the assistants to the president. I think we were picking up some new missionaries or something at the time. And they both look at me and they're like, "Yeah, we have a secret that we have to tell you, but we need to call president to tell you." So they call president's on the phone. We're in the car and they're like, "Yeah, you're going to Mauritius." And I mean, it was something that, at least what I thought, it was unheard of at the time. I mean, because typically you were called Malagasy speaking and you served in Madagascar, or you were called French speaking and you served in Reunion and Mauritius, and they kind of served as two separate missions within the same mission boundary. So crossing the threshold wasn't a big thing, wasn't a pre-done thing. But yeah, again, I mean, he told me, and I was kind of dumbfounded a little bit.
Wow.
And again, I mean, super ecstatic, but completely unexpected.
Wow. And those weren't the days when you could just call up mom and dad, right?
No,
You had to wait.
exactly. I had to wait till I think another 3 or 4 days to email them about it. And it was funny because they actually were in Mauritius, I think 3 months prior. But yeah.
That's fantastic. So your mom got the email, and it must have been just crazy. So now I remember many years ago, your family was highlighted actually in conference. It was Elder Anderson, if I recall correctly. I don't remember all the details about that. Why don't you share that with your listeners and those who were listening in the day?
Yeah, I mean, it was back, I think it was 2016 or 2015 October conference. Larry Anderson, I think, was telling a story of conversion, and more specifically that we don't get to choose the time of someone's conversion, and we don't know what the full story of someone's conversion is. And so then he related my mom's story of conversion. My grandpa, I think, was one of the first members to join the church back in the early 90s in Mauritius, or sorry, 80s, early 80s. Mauritians are typically, most of them are Hindu. There are some Muslims and a little bit of Christianity, but it's like 40% Hinduism, 30% Muslim, and then another 20% Christian. So, I mean, my grandma was not, I mean, she was not about him joining the church at that time. But
Was
I
he
mean,
Hindu at the time? Was he practicing
they
any
were,
religion or faith?
they were, as, I mean, akin to, how a lot of people treat church, being, you go for your holidays, or you go for the festivals, not a lot of daily involvement in religion.
Okay.
But still very much culturally so. So, I mean, he was allowed to join the church. I mean, he was an adult. And I mean, it came to being because he drove the missionaries around. He was their taxi driver. That was what he did for work. And so my family, my uncles still do that to this day. So my mom's exposure to the missionaries, it was always a big thing growing up. I mean, I think she had asked to be baptized when she was 12, and I think her mom said no at the time. So she always knew the mission presidents in the area. She always knew, all the leadership all the time. Fast forward a little bit, she went to France. Elder Anderson was the mission president at the time. Separate story for him. He was challenged, the French mission, the Bordeaux mission at the time, to hit an extraordinarily large amount of baptisms for France. I think it was 100 in a month. He said, "I'm going to find someone personally to baptize." Anyways, he met my mom a day after or two that she met him. He invited her to be baptized, and then she was baptized the next day. And she wasn't certain about it. I mean, again, she left Mauritius at 18. She hadn't talked to the missionaries in a little bit. But Elder Anderson told her, "Is like, hey, I think you're part of a miracle here, and I think the Lord wants to be baptized." And she prayed about it, and she felt good about it, moved forward. And that was really the crux of Elder Anderson's conference talk, which was to say, like, sometimes we're involved in just a part of the conversion story, and we don't know whether that's the beginning, the middle. I'm not gonna say the end, because conversion's never really an end, but we don't know where we are. And sometimes we have to be okay with that. I mean, sometimes we feel frustrated that we can't get them to baptism, but sometimes you were never meant to get them to baptism. That could be later on, or some other plan that God has.
Uh-huh. So he was a part of that story. He's a part of your story in that sense, I guess. And it's great to see this intergenerational spiritual conversion, because now look at her kids. I mean, that's really quite amazing. When you were there, did you meet her family? Did you meet family you may not have ever seen before?
Growing up, we went to Mauritius probably every 3 or 4 years. So I'd known my cousins, but I only seen them probably 4 times in my life for, a week or 2 week periods. So yeah, I went over there and I saw my family pretty often, honestly. Still
Oh,
to
that's
this
great.
day, their interaction with the church isn't great. Not a lot of them. Hardly any of them are actually members, but I think they still have good memories of me being on my mission there.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you shared a part of that chapter of their life too. And thank you for sharing that story. I didn't remember all the details, but now as you explained it, it kind of made a little more sense to me.
Yeah.
So I'd like to ask those missionaries when they first get home from their mission, what were those weeks, months like? Where did you go home to? And what were those first few weeks, months like for you?
Yeah, my parents had moved from Oklahoma to Houston. And so I came back to a ward I was unfamiliar with. I hadn't been in Texas since I was 6. So I came back at age 20. It'd been 14 years since I'd been in Texas. It was a little weird at first. I didn't know. The ward was very friendly. Don't get me wrong. I loved the ward. It was great going to church, but it was still kind of this limbo. I was going to go to college in the fall. I got back in May. So I still had this 3 or 4 month period of time of just being at home, being with family. And a lot of times it was like, hey, I don't know what to do with, I feel like I have so much time,
Mm.
um, to just do whatever, really. Thankfully the bishop at the time talked with stake presidency, and then I got called to work in the temple. So I was going to the temple every week as a temple worker, which honestly I think was great for me
I
that
love that.
summer and that period of time.
That's great. Yeah, you are very busy on your mission. You're out a year, you went to Mauritius. I assume you learned French. I guess that's what French speaking. Is that what you spoke in Mauritius?
Yeah, church was in French. If you were educated, you spoke French in Mauritius. If you weren't as much, you spoke Creole.
Creole.
So we spoke Creole and French there, and it was, yeah, it was a lot, but it's doable,
Yeah, that's
especially with the
great.
Lord's help.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's great. Okay, so you go to school and you change your major a few times. That can be good or that can be bad. What was that like for you?
I think originally I was doing pre-med, and then I wanted to go to med school, and then I was going to do computer engineering to go into like biotechnology or biomedical engineering. I think then I changed it to entrepreneurial management, and then I finally settled on finance. But yeah, it was kind of a roller coaster. It took me probably 2 years to figure out what I was going to do. And I think the Lord was still involved at every step of the way. I think actually I could have kept my major as any of those, and actually everything would have been fine.
Mm.
Because I think my calling for me isn't specifically my career, but more so what I do with my career. And the base aspect of it is to try and help people, help my friends out, and try and educate people, and however that may be. But yeah, it was kind of a roller coaster, changing things here and there, and different career paths. But in the end, I think it all worked out, and it's not something I ever saw when I started college. It kind of would have been crazy to say that I ended up in finance, to tell myself that going backwards.
It does sound like you did keep the Lord involved in all those decisions, and I think that it's okay. I think that to our listeners who are restarting again over and over again, it's okay, and it's going to be all right. I know too often people really fret over that. And I think it's okay to just to work it through in your mind and to pray about it and consider it. That's obviously very, very important, right? But it's okay to restart and to move a different direction. Obviously, for you, it's worked out very well. Now, I should know this, but did you go to BYU? Is that where you
I
went?
did. I went to BYU
Okay.
in
I
Provo.
didn't know that. Apologize. I didn't know that. But then the next question I was going to ask you probably was a dead giveaway. So you met your wife in a ballroom dance class or something? Was that what you
I
did?
did. Yeah, we were both on one of the lower backup teams for the ballroom touring company, and we
That's
met.
a top tier group. That's
Yeah.
not a ballroom dance. That's why I figured maybe it was going to BYU. But.
Yeah, we definitely weren't the top tier teams. You could get on the intro teams pretty easily. But yeah, my dad did ballroom dancing throughout college and was on touring teams. So I was like, let me try it out and give it a shot. If I can meet some cute girls on the way, great. It worked out for me in in the end. But yeah, we met during peak COVID, actually.
Hmm.
We met in January of 2020, and then we were dating We started dating in March of 2020, and then we got married in July. So
Wow.
I kind of a quick
Yeah.
whirlwind of a thing. Again, it's one of those things where you always have a plan for your life, which is, my parents got married pretty quick. So I always told myself, I was like, yeah, I don't need to get married that quick. Like I'll date for a year, get engaged, and then get married after that. But the Lord kind of said, hey, I have other plans. Like you got to get married. Here's the answer. That was one of those where I've had like a very strong answer being like, hey,
Mm,
this is something you need to do. And again, it was one of those things. It was scary, but when the Lord tells you to do something and it's the Lord telling you to do something, you
yeah.
kind of just have to go with it because it's going to turn out well for your life in the end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm stating the obvious here, but your relationship has to be pretty close to the Spirit to feel that so strongly, right? I mean, otherwise it's just sort of a passing thought. But if you felt that answer so strongly, it does show the commitment you had to your own personal conversion. And with all the different languages that you speak, obviously the language of the Spirit is one that you learn very well and very fluent in. And I think that's very impressive. Okay, so now you've transitioned to finance. I guess that'd be the Marriott School if you went to BYU. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, it was the Marriott School of Business, did finance there. Yeah, and it's a good program with them.
Okay. So now you've got a child and you've got a little family unit moving along here. So I've got just a couple more questions for you. They're just sort of a chance for you to reflect on what you've learned through your journeys and your chapters of life. What would be the things that you felt like you learned from your mission that you've applied now as a young father, a young professional, and as a disciple of Jesus Christ?
I think one of the biggest things is patience, either with ourselves or with others, or also with the Lord. It's always been a humbling thing for me to realize, a lot of times I want something now, either an answer from the Lord or, I mean, just in general in life. The Lord says we can make decisions for ourselves and to be anxiously engaged in good causes. And sometimes for me, that requires finding the answers by myself. And sometimes I don't hear back from the Lord,
Mm,
until 3 months later after that decision.
mm,
And so kind of just realizing, being like, hey, this is a good choice. I feel good about this. I'm going to move forward with this. And, if I need to change or take a different path, let me know. But this is where I'm going to go. And it's kind of that, and a lot of resilience. I think sometimes you just have to push forward. And again, I think the Lord gives us a lot of guiding answers, and sometimes he'll put guardrails up to keep us in general the direction we should go. But I kind of like to think of it as like a large pasture that you can still wander quite a bit left or right and still end up heading the general direction. So
mm.
kind of just moving forward with faith in the decisions that you've been led to make.
Faith, patience, and perseverance. I love that. Okay, so now you've given us great instructions, great ideas. This is the last question. If you were talking to a returned missionary navigating the next chapters of life, I understand your situation won't be the same as others, but what advice would you give them to excel in the chapters that follow their mission experience?
One of the biggest things I think is to set spiritual milestones for your life. How committed do you want to be to the scriptures on a daily basis or on a weekly basis? The coolest benefit of coming back from a mission is you can actually set a regular temple attendance schedule. Be like, hey, do I want to go weekly? Do I want to do monthly? Or whatever that may be. And essentially just deciding for yourself, how much do you want the Lord to be involved in your life? The Lord will be as involved in your life as you want the Lord to be. And, kind of making that commitment to yourself, being like, where do I want my spiritual growth to be in the next 10 years? And also too, as you start thinking about dating or about raising families, where do you want that to be? And kind of creating this mini outline, mini 5-year plan, 10-year plan of where you want to end up spiritually, professionally. And again, just either sticking to the habits you've already created or creating new habits and being diligent and committed to that.
Uh-huh. I love the intentionality of planning your life, but also planning to keep the Lord in your life. Neil, we've been richly blessed with your wisdom and your experiences. Thank you for taking the time, and all the best in your next chapters.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed today's program. It is our sincere hope that you gain insights from these lived experiences of disciples of Jesus Christ as you navigate your next chapters in life. We look forward to having you join us each week for the unfolding chapters of our guests. Remember to follow us on Instagram at RMNextChapters for announcements and updates. Also, you can visit us on our website at rmnextchapters.com, where you can listen to each podcast directly or link to your favorite podcasting platform. As always, if you have any thoughts or feedback, we'd love to hear it. Please send them to sid@rmnextchapters.com. See you soon.